Maul, a male Zabrak, was born on Dathomir. His mother was Kysina, a Night Sister belonging to Mother Talzin's coven, and his father was a Zabrak Nightbrother, who was slain shortly after Maul's birth according to the Dathomirian tradition. As a Nightbrother, Maul belonged to a clan of male Zabraks who served as warriors and subordinates to the dominant Night Sisters. Maul had two blood brothers, Pharaoh and Savage Opress. His mother, Kysina, wished for at least one of her sons to escape Mother Talzin's influence. Less than a year after Maul's birth, she encountered Darth Sidious on Dathomir, who at the time was still the apprentice of Darth Plagueis. She pleaded with him to take Maul away from the life of a Nightbrother. Although hesitant at first, Sidious sensed the infant's strong connection to the Force and agreed to take him, seeing the potential of forging his own apprentice out of the infant. Maul spent his early years under the care of droids, particularly TDD-9, at a secret facility on Mustafar. A year after he was taken, Sidious received permission from Plagueis to train him as an apprentice. However, Plagueis instructed Sidious to withhold the deeper Sith knowledge, intending for Maul to serve as an assassin rather than a Sith Lord. Life as Sidious's pupil was brutal. Soon after Maul could start training, Sidious personally branded him with black Sith tattoos in order to push him more toward the dark side. During his training, which included agility exercises as well as working with a computer console to increase his knowledge on the galaxy, any mistake was met with incredible cruelty. During a training exercise, TD-D9 struck Maul repeatedly with a wooden staff. In frustration, Maul instinctively used the Force to pull the weapon into his hands. When TD-D9 reported this to Sidious, the Sith Master was pleased. This was the first time Maul had used the Force actively. Sidious went on to take Maul to Tost, where he started teaching him in the ways of the Force. In their first exercise, Sidious threw rocks at the young boy in order to fuel his rage. Encouraging Maul to use his anger and pain, Sidious watched as the boy eventually retaliated, throwing some rocks back at him. Pleased by the result, Sidious brought the boy back, encouraged that his pupil was going to be a great asset. Back on Mustafar, Maul endured grueling training, including being chained upside down and lowered toward a vat of acid, forcing him to escape using the Force. During this time, Sidious started educating Maul about Sith history, detailing conflicts with the Jedi, including Naga Sadow's Great Hyperspace War, the rise of Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma, Darth Revan and Malak's betrayal, as well as the fall of the Brotherhood of Darkness. He also explained the Rule of Two established by Darth Bane. Sidious instilled in Maul a deep hatred for the Jedi, convincing him that, had it not been for the Sith, the Jedi would have found him on Dathomir and turned him into a mindless, obedient servant for the Republic. To demonstrate this, Sidious took Maul to Coruscant, where they stood disguised among tourists outside the Jedi Temple. Cloaked by the Force, Sidious pointed out individual Jedi, whispering to Maul about their ignorance of the Sith's impending return. Delighted in the presence of his future enemies, Maul eagerly absorbed his master's lessons, preparing for the day he would strike against the Jedi. Later down the line, during another visit to Tost, Sidious introduced Maul to a lightsaber with which Maul effortlessly cut down every tree in sight. His decade of training has slowly paid off. He had become a valuable weapon for the Sith. At the age of 10, Maul was sent to the Academy on Opress to hone the skills of an assassin. Sidious instructed him to refrain from using the Force to ensure he could rely on his raw abilities as well, rather than just the Force. There, he would train alongside other students in the ways of becoming an assassin. During a break from his assassin's training, Sidious took Maul to the icy world of Mydido. There, he endured grueling physical challenges, sprinting up and down mountains with near-perfect control. Expecting praise, he was instead hurled into a freezing lake by Sidious, who coldly observed as Maul struggled for survival. Left with no choice, the young Zabrak transformed his spear into anger and fought his way back to shore, only to be met with indifference from his master. The lesson was clear. Pain and suffering were his only companions in this world. Give in to anger, pain, and let it fuel you, or perish. The final trial of Maul took place on Hypori, an Outer Rim world where Maul was abandoned. For weeks, he was hunted relentlessly by hordes of assassin droids, forced to survive with no support. After a month of Maul being pushed to his absolute limits, Sidious returned and challenged his starving, weakened apprentice to a lightsaber duel. Maul, though resilient, was easily defeated. Sidious cast aside Maul's weapon and declared his failure, revealing that he had secretly been training another apprentice to replace him. Overcome with rage and betrayal, Maul lunged at his master, sinking his teeth into Sidious's hand and spitting the blood back in his face. But as his strength faded, he realized he was powerless against the Dark Lord. Resigned to his fate, he prepared for death. Sidious raised his lightsaber and struck. The blade turned out to be harmless. It was only a training saber. Laughing coldly, Sidious revealed the truth. There had never been another apprentice. By attempting to kill his master, Maul had passed the final test. He had proven himself worthy of the Sith. Sidious bestowed upon him the title of Darth Maul, Dark Lord of the Sith, and took him to Coruscant's industrial district. There, a medical droid tended to his wounds, preparing him for the dark future that awaited. Maul's status as a Sith Lord was deliberately kept hidden from Dark Plagueis, as it would have violated the rule of two. Sidious, however, had always intended to claim the mantle of Dark Lord for himself, plotting all along to betray his own master when the time was right. Now that he had officially become a Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Maul was often sent on missions for his master, assassinating politicians, merchants, and crime lords. All these missions served one singular greater goal: to cover up the Sith's dealings with different factions, destabilize the Republic while keeping the Sith's involvement hidden. The Sith shall eventually rise again in a grand plan set out by Plagueis and Sidious. For his missions, Maul was provided with a Sith infiltrator called the Scimitar, a heavily modified star courier equipped with a cloaking shield generator in order to carry out his missions in secret. After his first successful missions, Maul longed for a challenge, a Jedi to kill. Maul soon learned of a Jedi master called Ciolo Urmanka, who had abandoned the lightsaber for a purer fighting style. Maul sought him out and immediately attacked him. To Maul's surprise, he was easily outmatched, as Manka used only a wooden staff to disarm and wound him. However, instead of delivering the killing blow, the Jedi allowed Maul to escape. Refusing to accept failure, and fearing the consequences if he had revealed to a Jedi that he was a Sith assassin, Maul came up with a strategy. In order to beat him, he constructed a double-bladed lightsaber, inspired by ancient Sith schematics and the old Zabrak weapons. When he confronted Manka again, he feigned the same attack pattern, allowing himself to be disarmed. As Manka moved in to finish him, Maul activated his second blade, impaling the Jedi and securing his victory. Proud of himself, Maul returned to Coruscant and informed Palpatine of his success over a Jedi. Palpatine, pleased with his apprentice's progression, congratulated him on his victory. During this time, Palpatine aimed to infiltrate and manipulate the Trade Federation, using them as a tool to initiate the Sith's grand plan and destabilize the Republic. To gain control over the Federation, Palpatine sought out Nute Gunray, an ambitious member of the Trade Federation who was easily swayed to follow Palpatine's orders in exchange for power and influence. To gain the goodwill of Gunray and for him to secure some wins for the Trade Federation and rise through their ranks, Palpatine had Maul do several missions in order to help them. Maul could not hide his skepticism about why the Sith were involving themselves with the Neimoidians. To him, they were weak-willed, greedy, and cowardly. Sidious agreed but reminded him that despite their spinelessness, the Sith needed them for their greater plans. Maul was then sent to Krya to force the planet's spice merchants into signing an agreement with the Trade Federation, which would then be granted as a win to Gunray. Although he was successful at first, one merchant ignited a protest that soon escalated into a full-scale rebellion. In an act of defiance, the people destroyed their entire spice supply rather than submit. With the entire population against him, Maul could not fight them all and was forced to report his failure to Sidious. In rage, the Dark Lord lifted his apprentice by the throat with the Force and nearly choked him unconscious. It was a punishment Maul would never forget. Failure under the Siths could mean his death, and he wouldn't allow that to happen ever again. Next order of things, Maul was sent by Sidious to eliminate the leadership of the powerful crime syndicate Black Sun. Black Sun had connections to the Trade Federation, and the Sith didn't want them to potentially leak their involvement with them. Also, they had been involved in an assassination attempt on Darth Plagueis, thus they also wanted to exact their revenge. Maul proceeded to infiltrate the Black Sun fortress and massacred everyone in there. Every guard and the entire leadership was killed. Maul returned to Coruscant and reported his mission success to Sidious. Pleased, Sidious told Maul to return to Mustafar, satisfied that Black Sun was now in disarray and no longer a threat to the Sith's grand plan. Later, as part of a greater plan to destabilize the Republic as well as removing the threat of the Yanchuri warriors, Plagueis and Sidious orchestrated the Yanchuri uprising, provoking the Yanchuri into attacking the Republic and the Jedi. Darth Maul was sent to recruit a smuggler and intimidate him into compliance. Under the Sith's orders, the smuggler supplied the Yanchuri with weapons, leading to their rebellion against the Republic. When the Yanchuri attacked the Jedi Temple, Maul observed but did not interfere. As the crisis came to an end, Maul noted that the Jedi had emerged victorious, but Sidious saw it differently. The Yanchuri were no longer a threat thanks to the Jedi and the Senate's intervention, which played directly into the Sith's hands, and granting them a small victory. Maul insisted that if he had been deployed alongside the Yanchuri, more Jedi would have died, even going as far as to say that he could have slaughtered every Jedi there, including the younglings and council members. Sensing Maul's bloodlust and eagerness to fight the Jedi, but also his growing arrogance, Sidious went on to remind him that patience was essential. Their time would come to reveal themselves. The Jedi's destruction was not yet their immediate goal. With that lesson imparted, Sidious turned his attention to his next move, setting Gunray up to become the sole controller of the Trade Federation. To achieve this, Maul was sent to destroy two rival mining corporations on Dorvala to ensure the Trade Federation could take control over Davala's rich ore trade. Maul manipulated both companies into hiring mercenaries to sabotage each other, leading to their mutual destruction. When the surviving leaders realized they had been deceived, Maul led them into a final battle, then eliminated them himself. He altered evidence to frame each other for the conflict, causing the companies to collapse. Returning to Coruscant, Maul listened as Sidious contacted Gunray. The deception had worked, and the Trade Federation gained control over the ore trade. Dorvala now had Senate representation through the Federation, and through this victory, Gunray secured a permanent seat in the Directorate. In a meeting on Eriadu, the other members of the Directorate were assassinated by droids set up by Sidious, making Gunray the sole operative of the Trade Federation. The Sith now had a puppet in power of one of the most influential companies of the galaxy. Over time, the Federation started to build a droid army under the pretense to secure their trade shipments from pirates, all under the influence of the Sith. As the Federation remained stifled under the Republic's newly implemented taxation of the free trade routes, Sidious and Gunray had started to discuss countermeasures, one such being the blockade of Naboo that had been long planned by the Sith. Reassured by Sidious's confidence that Naboo's significance would ensure widespread galactic interest in their blockade, Gunray moved forward with the plan. Deputy Viceroy Half Monchar, a high-ranking Neimoidian in the Trade Federation, learned about the blockade of Naboo and saw an opportunity to escape and profit by selling this sensitive information. He fled to Coruscant as he found a Sith holocron with the plans laid out, intending to sell it to the highest bidder. Recognizing the danger if the blockade and the Sith's involvement was to be revealed, Sidious ordered Maul to eliminate Monchar and anyone he had contacted. Maul tracked Monchar to his hideout, killed him, and attempted to recover the holocron, only to realize it had already fallen into the hands of information broker Lord Pavin. This forced Maul into a relentless pursuit across Coruscant, where he ran across and clashed with two Jedi, defeating them both. However, Pavin had escaped due to the Jedi's intervention. Pavin ultimately smuggled the holocron to a political ally, unknowingly delivering it into the hands of Darth Sidious, disguised as Senator Palpatine. Maul later tracked Pavin down and executed him, ensuring no witnesses remained. Maul went on to erase any of the Sith's involvement, and the Trade Federation was able to proceed with the blockade of Naboo, setting the stage for the conflict that would lead to Palpatine's rise to power. The Neimoidians wasted no time positioning their ships around Naboo, declaring that any attempt to break the embargo would be met with deadly force, and that the Naboo people would starve unless the Republic repealed the new trade regulations. Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum, sensing the political instability of the Naboo blockade, secretly enlisted the Jedi's Council's help. He discreetly sent Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to negotiate with the Trade Federation, catching both Darth Plagueis and Sidious off guard. The Jedi's involvement threatened to expose the Sith's hidden influence, forcing them to accelerate their plans. Sidious ordered the Trade Federation to immediately eliminate the Jedi and invade Naboo ahead of schedule. To calm Gunray's fears of Republic intervention, Sidious assured him that the Sith would take steps to legitimize the occupation. Queen Amidala would be forced to sign the treaty that would officially place Naboo under Federation control. Plagueis saw this as the moment for the Sith to finally reveal themselves, and Sidious vowed to ensure Darth Maul was prepared for the next stage of their plan. Darth Maul had been conditioning his mind and body, rigorously training in the Wurt's combat chamber when Sidious summoned him via comlink to the strategy room. As he entered, Maul immediately noticed his master's irritated expression. Sidious ordered him to remain in the shadows and listen as he spoke with the Trade Federation leadership who reported on the Jedi's escape. Though Maul remained silent, excitement surged within him at the opportunity to finally face the Jedi in battle yet again. A transmission from the Neimoidians soon followed, informing the Sith that the Jedi and Queen Amidala had escaped the blockade. Furious, Sidious called Maul forward, declaring to the fearful Neimoidians that despite their incompetence, his apprentice would locate their lost ship. A transmission originally sent by Naboo's governor, C.O. Bibble, had been intercepted and edited by Maul into a false distress signal, designed to lure the Queen and her allies into responding. Tracking the modified signal, he determined that they had fled to Tatooine. Sidious ordered him to locate the Jedi first and then return the Queen to Naboo to sign the treaty, legitimizing the Trade Federation's occupation. Confident in his mission, Maul departed Coruscant aboard the Scimitar. Upon exiting hyperspace, Maul was delayed when he was ambushed by Togorian pirates. To eliminate all witnesses, he infiltrated the pirate freighter and slaughtered its entire crew. The battle left him with a wounded leg, but he resumed his course for Tatooine in a hurry, aware that the pirates might have delayed him long enough to potentially miss the Jedi. He landed on Tatooine under the cover of night, far from the planet's major settlements. He deployed his 3 DRK-1 probe droids to search for the Jedi and the Queen's ship. This allowed him time to tend to the leg wound he had sustained during his battle with the pirates. At dawn, Maul discovered tracks in the sand, leading him to an ambush set by Tusken raiders. Choosing to avoid unnecessary conflict, he retreated, preserving his strength for his true target. His withdrawal was hastened by a signal from his probe droids, which had located a Jedi Master near the Mos Espa Grand Arena. Tracking the Jedis there, Maul investigated a smuggling vessel, Dusty Duck, but instead of the Queen, he found and killed an unfortunate bystander on the smuggler's ship. Soon thereafter, his probes confirmed the Queen's starship was in the outskirts of Mos Espa and that the Jedi was heading there. Wasting no time, Maul sped toward the location of his speeder. Upon arrival, he sensed an unexpected presence, a young boy strong in the Force. Though curious, Maul set aside the thought, focusing solely on eliminating the Jedi and capturing the Queen. Springing from his speeder, Maul ignited a single blade of his lightsaber and engaged the Jedi in combat. The duel was brief but intense, and as the fight went on, he sensed the Jedi tiring. Fueled by the pain in his wounded leg, he pressed the attack, confident that victory was within his grasp. However, the boy had boarded the ship and warned the crew. Their ship took off, and the Jedi leaped onto the ship's boarding ramp, carrying him to safety. Maul watched, seething as the ship disappeared into the sky. Tasting sand and blood in his mouth, he felt the sting of failure. He had been denied his prize, yet instead of despair, he embraced the shame, using it to fuel his rage. Returning to the Scimitar, he transmitted his report to Coruscant, omitting any mention of the Togorian pirates and Tusken raiders. His mission had not gone as planned, but the hunt was far from over. As Maul returned to the works, he braced for the worst, expecting Sidious to unleash his wrath over his failure on Tatooine. However, to his surprise, his master was not angry. Instead, Sidious calmly questioned him about his duel with the Jedi, asking if Maul believed he could have won had the fight continued. Without hesitation, Maul affirmed that he would have, noting the Jedi's age and fatigue. Sidious revealed that Jedi's name to be Qui-Gon Jinn and acknowledged him as a formidable warrior. Despite Sidious's unexpectedly composed demeanor, Maul wrestled with his own frustration. He then quickly realized that regardless of his failure, the Queen would soon bring herself to Coruscant to plead her case before the Senate. His master confirmed this, revealing that the Queen and her Jedi escorts had already arrived on Coruscant. Maul, eager to redeem himself, asked if he should strike them down while they were within reach. But Sidious dismissed the idea as he had other plans for them. Still consumed with shame over allowing Jinn to escape, Maul retreated to his quarters, repeating the Jedi's name over and over in his mind. Unlike his usual targets, whose names meant little to him, Qui-Gon Jinn had earned a place in his thoughts. Maul let his hatred fester, using it to deepen his connection to the dark side. Hours later, Sidious summoned Maul back to the strategy room, where he had just returned from the Senate. The Sith Master, barely concealing his pleasure, informed Maul that Queen Amidala had failed to rally the Senate to act against the Trade Federation. With Chancellor Valerum's authority crumbling under political pressure, Naboo was now left defenseless. Sidious then revealed his next move. Amidala, realizing that the Senate would not help her, would return to Naboo alongside the Jedi in due time. To further cement the Federation's control, Sidious ordered Gunray to execute the Queen upon her arrival. When Gunray confirmed that Naboo was fully under the Federation's grip, Sidious was pleased and assured him that he would keep the Senate paralyzed. As he ended the transmission, he turned to Maul with a final order. He was to personally oversee the Federation's occupation of Naboo and ensure that the Clean, along with the Jedi, were to be eliminated. Boarding the Scimitar, Maul departed for Naboo. As the ship moved through hyperspace, he reflected on his mistakes on Tatooine, considering what he could have done differently. Upon reaching Naboo, he observed that the once massive Trade Federation blockade had been reduced to a single Lucrehulk-class control ship. The Neimoidians, obsessed with restoring their commercial operations, had withdrawn most of their fleet. Upon arriving at the palace, Maul assumed command over the Federation's occupation forces, his presence alone enough to instill terror in the Neimoidians. He listened as Gunray rattled off a list of failures like that Resistance forces had disrupted their supply lines, freed prisoners, and even destroyed a Federation mining camp. Maul had little patience for the excuses. The time had come to crush the last remnants of Naboo's resistance. Maul swiftly destroyed Naboo's resistant forces, including a raid on a Gungan village. On Sidious's orders, Maul also tracked down the Forcer Naboo security chief who knew about Palpatine's involvement with Plagueis, ensuring that all loose ends were eliminated. Maul did as ordered and swiftly brought the city back under the Trade Federation's control. Shortly after, Maul received word that Queen Amidala and the Jedi had returned as foreseen. As the Queen and her forces launched their counterattack, Maul intercepted the Jedi in Theed's central hangar. His moment had finally come. Activating both blades of his lightsaber, he prepared to face Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi in a duel that would determine the fate of Naboo and prove his worth as a Sith. The duel began with a flurry of strikes as Maul engaged both Jedi simultaneously. He relished the challenge of facing two opponents, but he quickly realized that Jinn's age slowed him just as he had noticed in their first duel, while Kenobi, though fast, lacked the experience of his master. He controlled the battle, using the environment to his advantage, steering the Jedi onto the high catwalks of Theed's power generator complex. With calculated footwork and strikes, Maul separated Kenobi from Jinn, leaving him with just Jinn as an opponent. The duel led them to a long hallway of energy barriers where the security doors activated, temporarily separating the combatants. As they waited for the barriers to deactivate, Maul prowled back and forth like a caged predator, his gaze locked on Jinn. The moment the barrier dropped, Maul lunged at Jinn with renewed ferocity, forcing him back toward the edge of the central reactor shaft. Jinn fought valiantly, but was at a disadvantage in the confined space. Maul feigned an opening, baiting Jinn into overcommitting, then struck. Spinning his saber staff, he landed a crushing blow with the hilt to Jinn's chin, stunning him. Without hesitation, Maul plunged his blade into Jinn's torso. Kenobi, trapped behind the final barrier, cried out in anguish as he watched his master fall. Maul deactivated his lightsaber and turned, waiting for the last door to release his next opponent. As soon as the barrier dropped, Kenobi attacked in a blind rage, his strikes fast and powerful, momentarily driving Maul back. The young Jedi's aggression surprised him, and Kenobi even managed to sever Maul's weapon in half. But Maul quickly adjusted. With a forced push, he sent Kenobi tumbling into the reactor shaft. The Jedi barely managed to grab onto a nozzle, hanging over the abyss and his doom. Maul paced above, savoring his victory. With a sneer, he kicked Kenobi's lightsaber into the pit, watching it disappear. Kenobi was defenseless. The fight was over. As Maul struck the rim of the reactor shaft with his lightsaber, he sent a cascade of sparks down toward Obi-Wan Kenobi, relishing for the moment he could watch the Jedi fall to his doom. Kenobi, however, did not panic. Instead, he reached out to the Force, calming himself and searching for an opportunity. He remembered that Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber still lay near his fallen master, something Maul, in his arrogance and overconfidence, had overlooked. In an instant, Kenobi acted. Using the Force, he propelled himself out of the pit, summoning Jinn's weapon mid-air. Maul barely had time to whirl around in shock before the Jedi delivered a lightning-fast horizontal slash, slicing the Sith in half. Maul's eyes widened in disbelief, his body flinching as pain seared through him. He fell backward into the shaft, his two halves separating. For a brief moment, Maul's mind reeled in disbelief. He had won. He had won. And yet, in an instant, it had all been undone. As this severed body fell into the reactor shaft, he felt only one thing: rage. Maul had underestimated the Jedi's resilience, allowing his arrogance and thirst for vengeance to blind him. Instead of focusing on preventing the starships from destroying the droid control ship or ensuring the Queen's death, he had fixated solely on eliminating the Jedi. His impatience and vanity had ultimately cost him everything. Yet, against all odds, Maul survived. As his body plummeted into darkness, his sheer will to live took hold. Fueled by seething hatred and an unyielding drive for vengeance, using everything Sidious had taught him, he reached out with the Force, grasping at anything to break his fall. He managed to catch onto an airbent, slowing his descent before plunging into the waters at the bottom of the shaft. Though his lower body was severed, his mind burned with one thought: Kenobi. Meanwhile, Sidious moved forward with the grand plan. Though Maul's defeat was a setback, even tarnishing his victory over his own master, Darth Plagueis, it was not a disaster. Within a year, he had found a replacement. Count Dooku, the former Jedi Master of Qui-Gon Jinn, was seduced to the dark side and took the title of Darth Tyrannus. Unlike Maul, Dooku was not only a formidable duelist, but also a skilled politician, making him the perfect instrument to ignite the Clone Wars. Eventually, Maul's unconscious, mutilated form was discarded into a waste container and transported to Lotho Minor, a junkyard world filled with refuse and mechanical debris. When he awoke, his body was broken, but his rage was intact. Screaming in fury, he activated his lightsaber and carved his way out of the container. Weak and delirious, he dragged himself through the wasteland. His suffering was interrupted by a distant scream. Turning his head, he spotted an anaconda named Morley fleeing from a massive fire-spewing machine. Summoning the last of his strength, Maul hurled his lightsaber with the Force, striking the machine's head and bringing it crashing down. As the fire extinguished, Maul collapsed into the unconsciousness once more. Recognizing an opportunity, Morley dragged Maul into the depth of Lotho Minor. Awakening in a cave, Maul was once again consumed by rage. His mind, shattered by the torment, clung only to one memory: Obi-Wan Kenobi. His hatred was all that kept him alive. With the Force, he fashioned crude spider-like cybernetic legs from the scrap around him, giving himself a grotesque new form. For 12 long years, he survived in near solitude, feeding on small creatures and insects, with only Morley aiding him in finding shelter and food. His memories were fragmented, his identity lost, but one name kept reappearing in his mind: Kenobi. In the greater galaxy, the Clone Wars had erupted. Sidious's plan had been set into motion, and he was just going as he had planned. Maul, though, wasn't aware of any of it happening, biding his time in a meaningless existence on Lotho Minor. Mother Talzin, leader of the Night Sisters, was the only one who knew that Darth Maul had survived and was in exile somewhere in the Outer Rim. After she was unwillingly getting drawn into the war by Dooku and Sidious, as well as her disapproval of their treatment of Ventress, Talzin created Savage as an apprentice to Dooku to assassinate him. After Savage and Ventress failed in their attempt to kill Dooku, she gave Savage a talisman infused with Maul's blood to help him locate the lost Sith, assuming the time had come for him to return from his exile. Savage tracked Maul to Lotho Minor and encountered Morley. Morley, assuming Savage to be yet another prey, lured him into Maul's lair, where the deranged Sith attacked him. Savage quickly overpowered the maddened Maul, though, who at this point had no semblance of sanity left. Presenting Maul with Talzin's talisman, Opress helped him reclaim some of his lost memories before bringing him back to Dathomir. There, Talzin used her dark magic to restore his mind and reshape his spider-like cybernetic legs into a more humanoid form. By the time Maul fully regained consciousness, Talzin had vanished. Feeling the Force out of balance, Maul learned from Opress that the Clone Wars had begun, and he was furious that such a grand conflict had started without him. Recounting his past to his brother, he revealed his deep hatred for Obi-Wan Kenobi. With renewed purpose, Maul accepted the severed half of his old Sith lightsaber that Savage had recovered on Lotho Minor and declared that they would begin their revenge. Seeking to draw Kenobi out, Maul and Savage traveled to the planet Raydonia, where they massacred an entire village, broadcasting a transmission to the Jedi Council. He demanded Kenobi face him, knowing the Jedi Master would not ignore the call. Despite the Jedi Council's concerns, Kenobi went alone to confront his old enemy. Awaiting him in the burning ruins of the village, Maul stepped forward, revealing himself to Kenobi. Together, the two brothers easily overpowered Kenobi and knocked him unconscious. Maul, however, did not intend to kill Kenobi quickly. He wanted him to suffer just like he had suffered for all these years on Lothal Minor. As he mocked his prisoner, he expressed disappointment that Kenobi had risen to the rank of Jedi Master, despite in Maul's eyes being weak as ever. Before he could continue his torment, an unexpected arrival changed everything. Asajj Ventress, who wanted to settle the score with Savage as well as getting the bounty on him, freed Kenobi. A fierce lightsaber duel erupted inside a cramped cargo hold, resulting in Kenobi and Ventress escaping in an escape pod, leaving the brothers behind. Rather than rage over their escape, Maul remained composed, knowing he had waited years for revenge. He could afford to wait a little longer. Following their skirmish with Kenobi and Ventress, Maul and Opress set out on their bigger goal, building an empire for themselves to enact their revenge on all of Maul's enemies who had betrayed him, including Sidious. They traveled to Yellowblade's Landing and attempted to recruit mercenaries. However, the local gang rejected them, leading the brothers to slaughter the entire gang. Continuing on their mission of building their own army, they were soon intercepted by a Jedi strike team of 5 Jedis led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Plo Koon. The brothers managed to separate the Jedi, though, killing all but Kenobi and Plo Koon before escaping. Later, on the mining world of Morjon, the brothers' growing reputation earned them a bounty, making them extremely wanted in the galaxy. Unconcerned by that, though, they raided an intergalactic banking clan space station in the Cyblock system, destroying the station's droid security and stealing vast sums of credits. After having secured the credits, Maul wanted to make sure to establish himself as the dominant Sith amongst the two brothers. From here on out, he would be the master and Savage the apprentice. Now that they had the credits, they went to Florum, where they sought to recruit Weequay pirates under Hondo Ohnaka. Some pirates joined them willingly, but others, including the pirate Captain Hondo, resisted. However, their conquest was interrupted when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Adi Gallia tracked them down yet again. Another fight ensued, this time leading to Galla's death at the hands of Savage. Maul continued his duel with Kenobi inside Ohnaka's base, but when Opress lost his arm in the fight to Kenobi, Maul recognized that need for strategic retreat. They attempted to escape, only to be betrayed by the pirates that had originally promised them their allegiance. Desperate to get away, the brothers make a run for their ship. During the escape, Maul got one of his cybernetic legs blasted, and their ship, along with all their credits, was shot down. They managed to escape in an escape pod, but Maul's plan had failed, and they were worse off than ever before.